Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my Smackdown review. Also going to review the Mixed Match Challenge in the same video. And tonight's Smackdown was from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I gotta say, after coming off of a shitty Raw last night, which I consider, or as everybody here in the YWC and online, considered to be one of the worst Raws in its history last night, which I fully agree with everybody. I think I agree with everybody saying that last night's Raw was one of the worst Raws in the show's entire history, because it was. That show pissed me off last night. But yeah, so Smackdown tonight, after coming off of a shitty Raw last night, this Smackdown, this was like a breath of fresh air. This Smackdown was a solid show tonight. I would have to say that it was a good show tonight. I really enjoyed some stuff, tonight on Smackdown. And, overall it was a solid, good show. And, the show opened up with Paige, who was in the ring. She was welcoming back return of Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch ended up returning tonight. The crowd really popped for her. Good seeing Becky come back after she got injured by Nia Jax. And Becky says, when you're the hottest thing in the entire, industry, any time away is too much time away. She goes on to say that she attacked Raw and she bled, she fought, and won before showing up the next night to fight. And at Survivor Series, also to fight. And she goes on to say that she was stopped and they tried to hold her back. Which got boos from the crowd. She says the man, as she would call herself, is putting herself back in the game. She goes on to say that at Survivor Series, she had to watch someone step into her shadow and fight Ronda Rousey, who was Charlotte. And she goes on to say that she wants to get this out of the way, so she ends up calling Charlotte out. Charlotte ends up coming out. Becky tells Charlotte, she told her to give Ronda the beating she would have. And Charlotte came pretty close. She goes on to say, although if it were her, Ronda wouldn't have been standing the next night. And Becky goes on to say that it took Charlotte channeling her to take it to the Raw Women's Champion. And Charlotte says, she wasn't trying to be her. She wasn't trying to be Becky, but she was just trying to be herself. The seven-time Women's Champion. And the only woman on either roster capable of giving Ronda the beating she deserves. And so Charlotte says she's genetically superior and has the mindset to do anything to get the job done. And then we got Becky saying, Charlotte just went from copying her old man, of course talking about her father, Ric Flair, to copy the man, which is her, as she would call herself, Becky. And she ends up going to say that, Charlotte is a bootleg Becky trying to take what's hers. And Becky's, not having it. And, Charlotte goes on to say that, she says to Becky, that Nia Jax must have hit her harder than she thought. Because Becky went from quirky to delusional, and she goes on to say that Becky Lynch is the one who's copying, Ric Flair. So Charlotte ends up calling out Ronda, calls Ronda out, and says, she'll be at TLC, and she was born ready. Before she was, she addressed, Becky Lynch again, saying, she fought for herself, and she'll fight her again. She'll fight Becky again right now. And so the two end up, drawing it up. Paige gets between them and orders the both of them to shut up. And Paige ends up saying that she loves this side of Charlotte and hasn't seen any woman on this roster, with, this degree of desire. So Paige goes on to say that at TLC, she's given Charlotte her rematch against Becky for the Smackdown Women's Championship. And so out comes Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Zelina Vega, and the Iconics, Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. Mandy goes on to say that, this is insulting that Paige would, say no one has, shown the desire that Charlotte has. And Mandy says, everybody's talking about what Charlotte did to Ronda, but any one of them could have done the exact same thing. And she goes on to say any one of them deserves a title match. Whether it be her, Sonya, Zelina Vega, or either Billie Kay or Peyton Royce. So Mandy goes on to say to Paige that, after Paige left Absolution, if anyone remembers, that, stable with Paige and Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. So Mandy says, after Paige left Absolution, she's given all the opportunities to her old PCB members. And so that brought out Naomi, Asuka, Carmella, and Lana. And Asuka got a huge pop from the crowd, because what WWE has been doing with Asuka right now, it's pathetic. But so Naomi, Asuka, Carmella, and Lana came out. They all agreed of what Mandy said. And Naomi says, the SmackDown roster is packed with talent, and any one of them can be champion. And Becky says, oh, she'll knock the head off any of them. And so Paige is really liking this. And she says every woman on the roster will be in a battle royal, and the winner of the battle royal will be added to the TLC match between Charlotte and Becky for the SmackDown Women's Championship, because it was originally going to be Charlotte versus Becky Lynch for the title, but now that Paige made this battle royal, it will be now a triple threat match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So it will be the winner of the battle royal, which happened tonight, versus Charlotte and Becky Lynch for the title at TLC in a TLC match. So, and that was the opening segment to SmackDown. But it was a good opening to SmackDown. Really happy to see Becky back. She healed up pretty fast. So it was good to see her back. It was good, to see the crowd, really pop for Becky and, chant, her name. So and then we had the first match tonight. It was the Usos versus the Bar. Cesaro and Sheamus. Big Show wasn't out there because apparently Cesaro wasn't too happy that Big Show didn't do nothing last week when the New Day was throwing the Thanksgiving stuff at Cesaro, throwing cranberry sauce stuff in, and Big Show ended up shoving Cesaro. So pretty much once again, Big Show's probably going to turn babyface again. So, but this match, it was a decent match between the Usos and Cesaro and Sheamus. It was very entertaining, back and forth between them. And the Usos ended up getting the win. Jimmy Uso ended up hitting a diving splash on Sheamus to score the win. So, but it was a decent match. It was very entertaining. Then we had New Day was watching the Miz's match last week with Shane. You know, when Miz took on those two jobbers, and he eventually lost. To one of them. And Miz got pissed because the New Day were making fun of him. And he goes on to say last week, him and Shane were fighting for their lives. Well, Miz was the only one. Well, Miz, you were the only one who was competing in that match. Shane didn't, get in the match. So Miz says he can beat all 3 members of the New Day. And he says he's going to Shane to set up a match tonight. So that was what happened backstage with New Day and the Miz. Sorry about that, but after that segment, SmackDown went to commercial. Then when it came back from commercial, we had AJ Styles returning. I mean, he only took a 2-week break. He wasn't here last week, so he ended up coming out, and he says for 14 days he has been without the WWE title. He goes on to say no one likes to lose, and he hates it, and it is the way he lost that bothers him. And he says once he became the WWE champion, there would have been a target on his back. And he shows, the clips of what happened, with Daniel Bryan, beating him. And he says, what bothers him was what happened after the match, when Daniel Bryan ended up kicking him over and over again. And, when he wasn't cleared to be at Survivor Series or Smackdown last week. He says, he watched from home last week when Daniel explained his actions. And he goes on to say what Daniel said is a lot of BS. And he's looking forward to smashing Daniel's face in. He goes on to say, we don't have to wait till TLC. Let's do this now. And he says, Daniel Bryan is not here. Which got, boos from the crowd, of course. He says for 371 days, he never missed a live event, a pay-per-view, or a Smackdown. Because, it's where he belongs. And he says for Daniel Bryan to be at TLC, that, Daniel Bryan could bring his dreams, his excuses, and the WWE Championship. Because it belongs to him. So it was a good promo segment from AJ Styles. Really liked it. AJ coming back, explaining, all that, setting up hype for the match at TLC. And I forgot to say, this SmackDown tonight, I think it did a pretty good job hyping us up for TLC. Just on their side, on the SmackDown side. Raw side, who gives a shit? Then we had Shinsuke Nakamura versus Rusev. The match never got underway because Nakamura ends up attacking Rusev. Ends up Kinshasa in him. one time. And, Rusev, was taken out. Nakamura was on the outside. Rusev was on the outside. Nakamura then hit a second Kinshasa to Rusev. So, match never really got underway. The bell didn't ring. So, the match was a no contest. So, and then after that, we had Michael Cole. He was there tonight because he was out there to celebrate Jeff Hardy's 20th anniversary in the WWE. It's been 20 years since Jeff Hardy, has been in the WWE, which is awesome. Even though there was a time where he went to TNA, but he had everyone from the Smackdown locker room come out. They were all standing on the stage. So Michael Cole then, introduced Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy ended up coming out, and a video package was shown, and it was showcasing what Jeff Hardy, did, all his crazy moments that he had in his matches over the years. It showed, him winning the Intercontinental Championship. It showed him win the United States Championship, the World Heavyweight Championship, and, the WWE Championship, which he won at Armageddon 2008 by pinning Edge. And also, Triple H was in that match. It was a triple threat. It was Jeff Hardy, Edge, and Triple H. And, of course, Jeff Hardy ended up walking out of that match victorious with a really great end to that match. So, but, yeah, they showed that, a clip from that. But it was a really good, well done video package for Jeff Hardy. I can't believe it's been 20 years since, he debuted in WWE alongside, Matt Hardy, his brother Matt. Sorry about that, but I was saying, it's been, can't believe it's been 20 years since, Jeff Hardy made his, his WWE debut, alongside, his brother Matt. It's been, good years for, Jeff Hardy when, he was in WWE, and then when he came back. And, he made my childhood, watching, his matches all the way up from, when I was a kid to the present. He's still entertaining. He still could go. And after the video package was over, Jeff Hardy ended up thanking us fans. And, when he watched, that video package, he was like, "What's wrong with me for doing all those crazy, things, those crazy moments in those matches?" He goes on to say that he lived the highest of highs and felt the lowest of lows, and that the fans stuck through his side, and he is grateful for that. And he goes on to say that he wouldn't be here without his wife and girls, and he thanks us for making this night possible. And he goes on to say that this is far from a retirement speech, and he doesn't know what the future holds. And so he goes on to say that, he tells us, let's find out together. And then we had Samoa Joe end up coming out, and he says to Jeff Hardy, he was in the back, and he goes on to say that, he says having a bottle of champagne around Jeff Hardy, isn't the best idea, which got boos from the crowd. And Joe says he doesn't celebrate weakness nor believe in second chances, especially when men like him haven't got there first. I'm like, Joe, you've been granted, matches. You've been granted, WWE championship, matches, but you didn't succeed. But then he says, then Jeff Hardy, does the delete gesture, the delete. Everybody in the crowd is going delete. And so Samoa Joe ends up saying, what bugs him is despite all of Jeff's mistakes, he allows himself to be put on a pedestal. And Joe says, it makes him absolutely sick. Because, he goes on to say that, there's an equal and opposite time, Jeff Hardy ended up letting us down. And Jeff Hardy says, no matter what, Joe says, he can't rain on his parade. And he's walked a tightrope for 20 years. And he still lives for the moment. And so Jeff ends up telling, Samoa Joe, why don't we make this one, right now? Why don't we have a moment right now? And so, Samoa Joe ends up, wanting nothing to do with Jeff Hardy. So this pretty much sets up, a match between, Samoa Joe and Jeff Hardy. It's going to possibly be at TLC, of course. So yeah, I can tell that that's going to be a match for TLC. So, but all in all, it was a good segment. It was a good segment, celebrating 20 years for Jeff Hardy. Absolutely deserves it. Absolutely deserves it. Really enjoyed it. Jeff Hardy, always been one of my favorites ever since, I was a kid. With, him and Matt Hardy with Team Extreme, when they were with Lita. It was always a joy watching the Hardy Boys as a kid. And then we had Kofi Kingston versus The Miz. This was a decent match. Back and forth between Kofi and The Miz. Kofi Kingston, take it down The Miz. The Miz actually tried to cheat his way out of the match or cause the match to be a DQ. There was a point where The Miz ended up ripping off the turnbuckle, and the ref didn't see it. The ref was distracted, and so Big E ends up taking the pancakes, putting it on the the hole where the turnbuckles stands. And it led to The Miz, retrieving a chair. And the ref, was distracted about that. And I think it was Xavier ends up taking the chair away from The Miz. And before that, The Miz ended up drop kicking Xavier Woods because Xavier was blowing, Francesca, the trombone. And eventually led to Kofi Kingston. After Xavier ended up retrieving the chair away from The Miz, Kofi Kingston then eventually hit the Trouble in Paradise on The Miz to score the win. So Kofi Kingston wins the match. But all in all, it was a decent match. Then we had Randy Orton. He ended up coming out to address what he did to Mysterio last week. Orton says, these words: disrespectful, disgusting, disturbing. He goes on to say that it's all words that we said for what he did to Mysterio last week. And he says if he chose a word, it would be euphoric. And he didn't know what the big deal and what is special about, the mask that which he ripped from Mysterio. Sorry about that again, but Orton goes on to say that, he didn't bother with the history because he didn't care, and what he did because he didn't care about, Mysterio's, the mask that Mysterio wears, his history, because, you know, he didn't care. And he goes on to say what he did last week was meant to embarrass Mysterio and take him down the pedestal, which the fans end up putting him on. And Orton goes on to say what he did last week is also, you know, why, you know, Mysterio is another one of his victims. And so Rey Mysterio ends up coming out, and Mysterio starts taking out Orton. Orton fires back, throwing Mysterio into the barricade. Mysterio actually came out with a neck brace. So Randy Orton ended up pulling off the neck brace. Mysterio ends up coming back, kicks him a little bit, hits the 619, does Enziguri, and Mysterio then hits Orton with a second 619. And Mysterio then takes a chair, tries to go to hit Orton with it. Orton gets back up, hits Mysterio with a DDT, with the DDT from the second rope. You know, as Michael Cole would say, vintage Randy Orton. And Orton then takes the chair and rams Mysterio throat first into the steps. So eventually we're going to get a match at TLC, you know, between Randy Orton and Mysterio. I could, you know, sense that. Sorry about that again, but you know, it was a decent segment from Randy Orton. And then we had Shane McMahon backstage. The Miz comes and says to him, you know, where were you? And Shane says, you know, he was right here. And, you know, apparently Miz wanted, you know, Shane out during his match with Kofi Kingston. And so Miz says, you know, he can't will this team into existence on his own. He just wants Shane to meet him 1/3 of the way in. And Miz says he could have beat Kofi if he had his partner on hand. And Shane ends up saying to Miz, they're not a team. And Miz insists that the Best in the World trophy is their child. And he knows for a fact that they're damn good parents. And he goes on to say that makes them family. And he tells Shane to start acting like it. It's funny a little bit though, but you know, we had that. Then of course the main event, it was the women's battle royal. Winner will be the #1 contender in the TLC match against Charlotte and Becky. Of course, it was Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Zelina Vega, Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, Naomi, Asuka, Carmella, and Lana. And it was a decent battle royal, and it was predictable in the end. But at the end of the match, it came down to Asuka and Sonya Deville, and the crowd was cheering for Asuka. They really wanted Asuka to win the match, to win this battle royal, and you know, it was down to the wire between them both. You had Mandy Rose trying to eliminate Asuka, but Asuka ended up taking her out, and Asuka ended up knocking off Sonya Deville. Asuka ends up winning the women's battle royal, and so now she gets to face Becky and Charlotte for the SmackDown Women's Championship in that triple threat TLC match, the first ever women's TLC match, and it's pretty good. You know, little hype for this match now. You know, hopefully they do Asuka, you know, justice. in this match, and give her a big push, because ever since WrestleMania, ever since Charlotte breaking Asuka's streak, WWE has been doing nothing with Asuka. So hopefully this is Asuka's chance, and hopefully after this WWE can start pushing Asuka once again. But hopefully they do it. And I can tell right now this is going to be a good match at TLC between the three of them. Really looking forward to it. And so now we move on to the Mixed Match Challenge. The first match, it was Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox versus Curt Hawkins and Ember Moon. This was a pretty boring match. You got two jobbers going at it, Jinder Mahal and Curt Hawkins. Alicia Fox is a jobber also. Ember Moon deserves a whole lot better, but WWE is making her, putting her in these matches where, she deserves better. And what was really stupid was Ember Moon ended up hitting the Eclipse on Alicia Fox. Curt Hawkins comes in and ends up, trying to get a pinfall on Alicia Fox. And I'm like, Curt Hawkins, what the fuck are you doing? It was so fucking stupid. And then eventually led to Jinder Mahal coming in, hitting the Colossus on Hawkins, and Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox move on. Thanks to Curt Hawkins' stupidity. So that makes it now for Hawkins 237 losses. All in all, it was a pretty boring match. And so Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox move on. And then a show next week, it's going to be The Miz and Asuka versus Jimmy Uso and Naomi. That's going to be pretty cool to see. The Miz and Asuka won last season's Mixed Match Challenge. But who knows if they're going to win again. And then we had the last match, Finn Balor and Bayley versus Bobby Lashley and Mickie James. And this was a entertaining match. This was a back and forth match. Finn Balor getting his revenge on Bobby Lashley after what Lashley and McIntyre and Corbin did to Balor last night on Raw. Balor got that opportunity to get back at Lashley. And you had at one point in the match, Lio Rush ended up getting off Bayley because Bayley was going for the pinfall, and Balor ended up going after Lio Rush, and Balor ended up taking out both Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush, and allowed for Bayley to hit the Bayley to belly on Mickie James to score the win. And so Finn Balor and Bayley win the match. They're moving on. So, but all in all, it was an entertaining match. It was decent. It was good seeing Balor get his revenge on Lashley after what happened last night. So next week we are going to get R-Truth and Carmella versus Charlotte and Jeff Hardy. So that's going to be a entertaining match. There's going to be a dance break. We all know it from R-Truth and Carmella. So, so anyways, that's it for this video. That's it for my SmackDown review and the Mixed Match Challenge review. Thank you all for watching. Really glad that SmackDown was a solid, good show tonight. We had Becky Lynch returning. We had AJ Styles, returning. after 2 weeks after he lost the WWE Championship to Daniel Bryan. And really enjoyed the Jeff Hardy 20th anniversary celebration for him. So yeah, but hope you all enjoyed this review, and definitely give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until the next video, I'll see you all later. Bye.